Hey, Real Estate Rockstars listeners. This is Aaron Amuchastegui. Hey, the interview you're about to hear is my interview with Veronica Figueroa. She's an agent from Orlando, and she has been an agent for over 20 years. She shared all sorts of stories about how she first did her business when real estate was just her side hustle, and how she got those listings, how she turned any sort of event in the community to a networking event, to how to get short sales, to the tricks that she was able to do to get banks to give her REO listings when when everybody's fighting for those listings, and how you could apply for those today. And then also how to scale big teams. So there was so much value in what she shared just now. I think you guys are absolutely going to love it. So without further ado, here's my interview with Veronica Figueroa. Well, hey, Veronica, glad to have you on here joining me at the Real Estate Rockstars podcast today. Where do you live? Where are you?
I am out of Orlando, Florida.
How long have you been out there?
I've been here 25 years. Army brat, grew up in the military, ended up here because of my parents, and never looked back.
Yeah. How long have you been in real estate of that 25 years in Orlando?
Of that 25 years, I got licensed the day after 9/11 since 2011. I mean, sorry, 9/11,
23 years.
Yeah, 23 years.
Right after 9/11. So that's not, I mean, I can't imagine that inspired you to get your license. It was probably like, all right, business as usual. I'm still going to get my license, so I better go apply tomorrow anyway.
I was studying for my real estate exam the day of 9/11. I was scheduled to take my test the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had already been studying. It was already on my mind. I was like, I'm gonna get my real estate license. I'm gonna do this. I failed like twice. I haven't said that out loud.
Yeah.
So I was determined to get my license. And then 9/11 happened. I was like, who's going to buy real estate? I was like, but I'm going to go ahead and get my license anyways, because I've been working so hard. But yep, there goes that career. That's what I thought.
Yeah. You're like, I did all the work, so I'll do it anyway, but the world's over.
Yeah. Nobody's going to buy houses. That's
Nobody's
what I thought.
Do anything. The 9/11 happened, and I think we all believed that like no one was going to do anything for a while. What a strange, but yeah, everyone always asks you if you remember what you were doing that day. I think it's great that you shared that you failed your real estate license test a couple times, because it's there's a couple reasons why I think it's great to take the power of that. Like, there's a lot of people listening right now that have not gotten their real estate license yet, that are just thinking about it. There are people that are out there driving around, learning about real estate. This is one of their first podcasts they're listening to, and they're trying to figure out if they should become an agent. And so I think two things, and there's a gal in my office that just finished studying, just finished taking all of her courses. And now she's signed up to take a real estate license, and she's very stressed about it. And I know so many people that have failed their real estate license test a bunch of times. And I know, but what I do know is it's like so much of life. You get your license, you pass your test, and then you don't actually use that knowledge anywhere in real estate. So it's kind of like, who cares?
It's so interesting because I have a friend, it took him, again, 12 times to pass his test. He became one of the best agents I know in my market. Over the last 20 years, I've watched him crush it. And I know people who bragged about, oh my God, I passed it on the first time, and they didn't do anything with their career. They, again, were really good students, but they didn't have the grit and the determination. I'm not saying one or the other is right. I'm just saying, like, that's my journey. I didn't pass it the first time, but I wanted it. How bad did I want it? I kept on going. And, 23 years later, here I am, and pretty happy that I stuck to it.
So you got licensed then in 2001. What was your first year in real estate like? How'd you get your first deal?
My first year in real estate, I was working a part-time job. I was working full-time, and real estate was part-time. I was going through a divorce, and I needed to supplement my income. I worked in human resources, and I would hide underneath my desk. I was pretty much trying to have conversations underneath my desk so that my boss didn't know that I was, trying to balance real estate and my regular job as I'm going through a divorce. And I did really, really well. balancing them both. Within the first 90 days, I think I had like 6 pending contracts. And I was like, man, this is great. But then I started realizing it was a lot to juggle. And I had to make a decision. And I quit my full-time job. And my mom was like, are you crazy? I was like, Mom, I'm dedicating 40 hours to this career and also balancing real estate. What if I gave my all to real estate? What's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work out, I'll just fall back on corporate America. I have a degree in human resources. That's what I was working in. And I loved it. I think it also gave me an advantage because I was in a career that allowed me to really have a connection with people and understand what was important to them. So I applied all the principles that I had learned in human resources and developing talent into the real estate space. My first year in real estate, part-time, I closed, I think it was like 20 transactions. And my second year in real estate, I closed 56 transactions. And then after that, the rest was history. I hired an assistant early on and I just started to scale. And I realized I was like, oh, if I can, continue to do the things that generate income, which is meeting more people and helping and serving people, and I can hire talent that can help support things that have to happen on the back end, then I think I can grow a really awesome business. And I quickly realized the power of prospecting, the power of always having an appointment. Early on in my career. I do want to say I did have a little bit of training, formal training in timeshare because I did work in the hospitality industry in human resources. And I got to spend a lot of time with the sales teams and people that, I'm in Orlando, so it's like timeshare Mecca. So I got to shadow some of those departments and I got to look at look inside or behind the scenes of timeshare and the art of, the close and, persuasion. And, I was actually the one placing talent for that division. So because I was placing talent in that division, I got to see what they did. I got to attend some of the trainings. And right after 9/11, going back to 9/11, because I was afraid, I started my real estate career, for a very brief moment, I was like, well, I guess I'll work in timeshare. As I, because I have this real estate license, I'll do the part-time real estate work in timeshare. Hated it. Didn't love it at all because it was like 90 minutes close and get them out the door. And I'm very much a relationship person. So I felt like my heart was being ripped out of me when the transaction was closed after 90 minutes and I never see these people again. So it wasn't for me, but that training really did teach me a lot. So I was able to apply it to my real estate career once I started running my own business. And I was like, okay, who's going to handle the paperwork? Who's going to handle this? Who's going to handle that? At first I was wearing a lot of hats. I was like, I should strictly be doing this. So that was how I launched my real estate, I would say, career. And here we are.
How did you get those first escrows? Because you were working another business full time, but you said you were at this point where you had 6 escrows going on. So how did you get those leads? How did you get those clients when you had a full-time job?
Yeah, for me, it was real simple. It was, who do I know? It was, my sphere. I always tell people, somebody. Somebody is gonna, someone is within proximity that you can help. And at the time I had small kids. So God bless the baseball games, the recitals, the birthday parties, all the things that you would do normally. I looked at those as my networking events. I wasn't at the bar. I was at the baby shower. I was at the kid barbecue or the birthday party. And I literally just started leaning into everyone that knew me. People respected me because, they saw I had bought a house early at an early age. I was very determined and ambitious in my other career. So when I started transitioning into real estate, I was not afraid to basically let people know what I was doing and genuinely make myself available to them and say, hey, listen, I would love to show you how home ownership is possible. Back then I was young, I was broke. So I had a lot of young broke friends or friends that perhaps didn't realize that they could buy. So I became the down payment assistant queen. I was like, where can people get money? Because the number one thing I'm hearing that people are struggling with is their down payment. And again, I was young, I where I lived, you saw a lot of young families that didn't have a lot of savings at the time. So I made sure that I became an expert in helping people make homeownership possible, even if they lacked a down payment. So I would make sure that they took the down payment assistant classes. If they had, let's say, credit that wasn't the highest, I was like, okay, let's get you in contact with someone who can help you understand credit and the things that you should do to improve your credit. Because if you had the down payment, but you had bad credit, then all I have to do is help you get your credit where it needs to be. So I just made it a point to help young families that didn't have perhaps the education, the knowledge, the finances to buy to buy a home. I educated them on home ownership. So that's how I was able to build my initial book of business.
So a lot of those down payment assistant programs are like in 2003, 2004, 2005, where it was like the full, essentially you could, is that what you're talking about? Like the systems at the time where sellers could essentially give like a 6% credit and it became the down payment?
No, there were a lot of, and there still exist. There were a lot of county programs at the time. Like you could get up to $30,000 down payment. Yes, there were some other alternatives, but at the time, in our county, there was a significant amount of money available to homeowners, first time homeowners at that. And that was my specialty. So I just simply became the person that was the go-to for it. I knew every program, and I also knew what incentives builders were giving. I knew what communities were catering to first-time home buyers. I knew what programs were 100% down payment. So if I had to drive to, rural areas that were offering USDA, that's what I did. I knew every corner of my market that specialized in first-time home ownership. And I was 21 years old, 22 years old. So I had to find a niche that worked for me. And
so if somebody wants to do that today, how do they go learn about all that stuff? How can they go figure out how it all works? Like, how are you teaching yourself the programs that were out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of programs, and these programs still exist. If an agent who's listening to this is not familiar with USDA, definitely want to become familiar with USDA. You can go to the USDA map and it'll show you what areas qualify. And USDA does require a special underwriting process, but it's not complicated. You just have to become familiar with the program. I would definitely say connect with a lender that understands the USDA programs and that can definitely educate you and empower you to speak intelligently on it. I would host buyer seminars as well. I used to host a lot of buyer seminars. I used to work closely with the county to make sure that I would bring a certified homeowner specialist, a home certification specialist, that they would give them the certification to qualify for the down payment assistance program. So USDA is separate than down payment assistance. Down payment assistance at the county level and at the state level. So I became familiar with the county level and the state level because I worked with lenders that specialized in it. So make sure you have a good lender that can also, again, help you. So whenever someone would come to me with some sort of scenario, I was smart enough to kind of understand the I would say qualifications for each one of these programs. And I just listened to them, and they would tell me what was interesting, what was important to them, what they wanted to, what was in the way and what they wanted to accomplish with homeownership. And then I was like, and I'm like, okay, have you ever thought about USDA? They're like, what is that? I was like, that we live in East Orlando, but if you just go about 2 miles down the block and you buy in Wedgefield, you qualify for 100% through USDA. They're like, really? I was like, and there's no, the PMI is less. There's no mortgage, lesser mortgage insurance than FHA. So they were like, huh? And I was like, oh, if that's what was in the way, I was like, then let's get you qualified. But I would definitely recommend them working with a lender that is very knowledgeable on the different programs. I would highly recommend you study your local county down payment assistance programs and your state levels. Again, I don't really specialize in that anymore today, but right. I know agents who this is their niche. Again, we're talking about 20 years ago that I had to just, find my way through the industry, and it was helping young families who didn't have a lot of finances. But they had good jobs. They were really working together. It was a dual income household. And you had to also understand if they were above the income limits, because there are income restrictions as well. But get with your local lender, look into your county programs. Sometimes they run out of money, but you'd be surprised how many families we helped, make homeownership possible. One of my proudest moments was a family that I still stay in touch with. I sold them a house probably around 18 years ago. They still live in the same home. They're still family friends. I was able to get them $42,000 down payment assistance. And to them, I am a lifelong family friend who helped them accomplish homeownership. They were the first in their family to ever buy a home.
Yeah. So when it first started, so you had these methods, but then you would meet people, like your sphere was your sphere, and you would go to the baby shower, you would go to the park, you would go to places, and you would just tell people you're an agent, and you would hope they would ask questions. Did you have like a pitch, a thing that you would do, or was it just natural because people would say like, hey, what are you doing now? And you would tell them what you're doing, and then they'd start talking about it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am Puerto Rican, and Latinos, we don't have a problem talking to people, first of all. Second of all, when we go to an event, everybody's a friend, everyone's a family member, everyone's asking each other, what are you doing? What are you up to? And it's a really easy conversation. Oh my gosh, how are you? How are the kids? Oh my God, you're doing so well. Or, good to see you. What's new, right? So for me, it was very easy to just enter into the conversation and say, I'm in real estate now. I'm super excited. I can help you buy a house. If you ever want to buy one, let me know. And I just recently helped a family get in a home and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, really? Can you help me? And one thing led to another. The thing is that my network was so like, it was so funny, Aaron. It was like, if you sold the house to one, then you're selling a house to the cousin, to the sister, to the brother, to the aunt, to the neighbor down the block, because my clients were so loyal and they were so grateful. And to this day, I'm proud to say that, my business still is very similar to that we get a lot of referrals and we get a lot of people who trust us because they know we're going to do a good job. Now I have a team. I run a really large team, but we take pride in the same, I would say, with the same principles. And we like to treat people as if it's more than just a transaction. It's a relationship. But yeah, it was easy. And I have become what I would consider a really good networker, right? I go to places. It's never about me. It's about them. I'm curious about them. Hey, what are you guys up to? Tell me about what your goals are. What are your dreams? And, it was very easy for people to say. There were young families. Oh, we want to buy a house one day. I'm like, I can help you. I have a program for that.
Yeah. See, so, and then what do you do now? So fast forward 20 years, you started that way, you got into business that way, and now you're still in Orlando, and the market has changed about 19 times since then, different methods and tactics. So how do you get deals now?
Well, today I am more in the team leader role. I have built a business that has evolved. We skipped over 20 something years, right? So then the market crashed and I had to become the short sale queen. So those same families that I helped also became families that my heart got broken because a lot of them eventually had to short sale. Then we saw the foreclosure era, and I became a foreclosure specialist, an REO specialist. I took this same approach, Aaron. I took my last $5,000. I know what it is to get the Range Rover repoed out of my driveway. I know what it is to go from eating filet mignon to ramen noodles again, because it was brutal in 2008, 2009. I've been around the block for a while. I also know what it is to take a short sale and have to fax the documents over to the bank and figure out which banks would close the quickest. And then I started prospecting specifically short sales that were, that the lender was a specific bank that I knew would give incentives for them to move for cash for keys, or who had Bank of America, who had which bank, because I knew which banks would actually give approvals and I could finally feed my family. Fast forward then, I took my last $5,000 to 5-star to a REO conference, because REOs were the only listings out there. So I was like, I need to break into that. And the people who were dominating in the REO space were people who were legacy agents. They'd been in the business for 20 years. They had experience with bank-owned properties. And I think my desire to be successful, and the fact that I had 5 kids, I had children to feed, and I had big dreams, but a low budget, I had to figure it out. And I hope that resonates with anyone who's listening. But I took my last $5,000 and I gambled it. I hopped on a plane and I went to 5-star and I went to the place where asset managers were at. And I made sure that they knew that I just wanted a seat at the table. And I knew that they had relationships with local agents. But if for some reason anybody even sneezes the wrong way, that I would love to be their second chance, their backup in Orlando. I did such a good job of letting them know that I was their new Florida Connect, that when I came back and I gambled my $5,000, I booked out a restaurant. I made contacts and said, hey, who do you know that's an asset manager that you're working with? You think I can, take them out to dinner? And gambled it all on the line. I came back home and I had 37 assets in my inbox because I made a good impression with the asset managers and I was not afraid to build those relationships. The only part that I messed up on is that I did such a good job of saying Florida. These assets were all over the place, Aaron. Some were in Miami, some of them were Orlando, some of them were, in places in Florida that I didn't even know how to pronounce. So I had to build teams overnight. And I wasn't going to say no to the business. And I had to become a member of the MLS overnight in markets that I didn't even know. So I developed the skill set of building teams very quickly because it was survival mode. It was survival mode in 2008, 2009. And I knew that if I had this opportunity, I had one shot to make a good impression with these asset managers or else they would never trust me again. And I built REO teams, bank-owned property teams, throughout Florida. I managed everything from operation living room and I did what I had to do. That skill set taught me how to scale. And today I run a team of roughly anywhere between 50 agents on any given day. I have a couple secondary markets that I also run. We became the number one team for our company 2 years in a row because what I started doing really well is I started scaling through enterprise accounts, big conglomerates. So if it was a hedge fund or if it was, when Zillow had Zillow offers, I was the agent that was managing thousands of properties for them. I really started understanding the corporate side of, corporate owned properties and I started building businesses around it. And then when the market started softening up on REOs, I took that experience and I decided, okay, let's go traditional. And I mastered lead generation, online lead gen. And I just started building my business around lead gen and being extremely intentional in our farm market. And today I've had the privilege of running a real estate team for over 15 years in my local market. And I coached, I developed, I help my agents get into production. I help my leadership team with all the marketing strategies. I am constantly building relationships with entities that can give us properties at scale, critical mass. And then we build the infrastructure around our agents so that they don't have to worry about all the processing or anything that takes up their time. And all they focus on is being in front of clients, building the relationships and providing excellent service. And we handle everything from TC, photography, got a minute questions, resolving anything that might happen because of our years of experience, so that they can do what they love to do, which is connecting with buyers and sellers. So that's kind of like a whole summary of the 23 years.
Yeah. I love so I was a home builder in 2005 and I was a home builder in 2005 that then saw the crash and I love, what I loved about your story was that example of betting on yourself to go get those REO listings. I mean, first was just short sales of like, hey, it's just that idea of just doing whatever it takes. And so that whatever it takes in today's business could be anything. It could be the door knocking. It could be the expired. It could be any lead that's out there. It's just trying anything to see if it's throwing everything against the wall to see if anything sticks. And then if you see something that sticks, then you start to go like, okay, I'm going to do a little of something because I need to pay my bills because of this change. Because you started in real estate when you could just sell houses. So like, 2002, 2003, you were just selling houses.
We're tripping over commission checks. Everything
is great. 2005, it's crazy. Then 2007, all of a sudden it starts to slow down. And 2009, it goes to zero. And so you go from making big money to none. And then you're like, what am I going to do to keep feeding my family and getting cars repoed? When you bet on yourself for the 5-star summit, I've had another guy on the show that did something similar, and he went to the 5-star summit. And he, and he had a somewhat similar story But his was he got in to then get a chance to do BPOs for somebody. Then he had to do 1,000 BPOs for next to nothing before he got his first listing. I remember doing property preservation. I got big into buying courthouse step foreclosures in 2009 before most people did. And then before that, in order for us to get a lender, we started doing the property preservation. And you talked about when you told the people you were Florida, what happened in preservation and a lot of the listings for people listening that weren't part of that. Really, what the first listings that Veronica got were probably the really, really bad ones. They were the ones that were 100 miles from everywhere, the ones that had the squatters in it. So they're like, oh, you want to be our backup here? Take the crappy ones that our good agents don't want. And you had to say yes to everything. And same with property preservation. They'd be like, okay, if you want to do all our property preservation, here's one that we're going to pay you $100 to change the locks and go mow the lawn. But hey, it's 250 miles from where you are.
Oh,
in the middle of nowhere. And we drive up to where the hills have eyes to go do that and then come back. But that's what got us the property preservation work was doing. So that was so much of that industry back then. So not only did you put yourself out there, then you had to do, that other stuff that they weren't there. And listeners, I know that sometimes when you hear these old stories, you're like, well, that doesn't apply to me, or that was such a unique time, or Aaron and Veronica were really lucky that they were doing real estate back then. But think about the lesson again. I'm just trying to recap. Like, you said, like, hey, there's a chance for me to do this. I'm going to go invest some money and go to this event where I know there are sellers.
Yeah.
And I'm going to invest some money and tell them, hey, I know you have a favorite, but let me be your second favorite. And you're going to take them to dinner and do different things and do whatever it can so they remember you. And so again, that way in the back of their mind, when this other person fails, you're their favorite second. So although we don't have the foreclosure crisis today and the short sale crisis today, that idea of getting into now doing corporate sales and things like that along those same lines, I think people can take those techniques and try them in their market today. If you know somebody that might have 100 listings, right, or might have 50 listings, or a big company that's coming to town that's going to start bringing people in relocation services, like all that stuff, such huge opportunities.
It's interesting how you broke it down, but it's so interesting because I love that you could say you could apply this to your business. Forget about that we were in the REO world. And by the way, I had someone call me this morning and I coached them. They went to their first 5-star. They're there right now. 5-star is actually happening right now in Dallas. And he called me. He was like, someone told me to call you because of your story, Veronica. And I'm here. And I was coaching him on, if I were to be at 5-star, what I would be doing. But I'll never forget, I even rented out a bowling alley. Not the full, I just rented out 2 lanes. And I was like, I need to not just be someone who's going to try to wine and dine them. I needed to do something unique. And that's where I kind of took the risk, but they were just so grateful. And we got to connect as people. So they're people first, right? They want to have a good time. They're constantly being courted. But going back to what you were saying of who has the assets today, forget about the REO market. Right now, we have big companies right now who they acquired a bunch of properties. They jumped into it for the rental market. And right now they want to move, they want to move their assets. They want to liquidate. So at our brokerage, we have an institutional division where right now we're managing almost 200 assets as well. It is not our only book of business, guys. We do traditional real estate. 80% of our business is traditional. Just giving you an example, there is business out there to be had. This relationship got us a builder account where they want to sell 67 townhomes. They had bought them, they developed them, they need to bring them to market. And because of this relationship, they said, hey, give it to the FIG team. They're obviously experienced. They know how to report to corporate owned assets, right? It's all, there's a lot of assets out there that are owned that aren't bank owned. And they want someone that they can trust. So again, that may not be your niche, but if you are an agent thinking, well, how does this apply to me? I want you to meet the neighborhood ambassador. I want you to meet the person that's the mayor of your, let's say, community. And when I broke into our community that we farmed for 16 years and we were the number 1 agent there in that market, I knew the HOA president. I was on the board with the volunteer committee. I knew every business owners. I would make sure that we hosted events at those businesses because they had an audience. They had people that would constantly go there. I made sure I figured out a way for my banner to be in their restaurant. I made sure I had a way for the menus to be reprinted and I would sponsor them and just barter certain things. So you can find ways to have critical mass and these people who are your biggest ambassadors that will send you business at scale, or you become the person that they endorse in your local market. And it's all the same principles. It applies to everything. And then you're going to meet that one person, you're one relationship away from the rest of your life changing or your business changing. And I have just been very lucky that lightning has struck more than once in my world, but it's because I never stopped building relationships and being confident and taking certain risk, even when it seemed crazy. People are like, "You're what? You're going to do what?" I'm like, "Yep, I'm going to go do that." And it was that mindset that actually opened a lot of doors for me. And we did some things that seemed crazy, but in the end, it actually worked out really well for us.
Yeah. I like to say lightning has struck a few times. I like to say I've had 3 or 4 once in a lifetime opportunities through those same timeline and same stories that you did there. My last question, what is the one thing you wish you would have known when you first got started in real estate that you think those new agents should know now?
What is the one thing I wish I would have known? You know, I wish I wouldn't have waited so long to make a decision to become that top agent. At the beginning, I was just doing what I had to do to feed my children. And I had a limited belief. I had a limited belief that I can't dominate that market because Susie Q already owns that market, or I don't know anyone there. And it took me 4 or 5 years to really own and decide that I was going to be that agent. And it took someone special in my life who said to me that, why are you driving an hour away to sell a house when you could farm this specific neighborhood? You could be this person here. I was like, well, who's going to buy from me here? They don't know me, like the demographics, like this is what I'm used to. They're like, no, you're smart. You could do so. Like you should make a decision that you're going to farm this community and become the number one agent here. And it took that person kind of like sitting me down and like schooling me and believing in me. And then I made the decision, Aaron. I was like, okay, who is the person that is dominating here? And when I looked it up, I was like, she was aging out. She had a builder relationship, but she wasn't involved in any community events. She really was just complacent. And I said, I'm going to look at everything that person's doing, and I'm going to also look at what they're not doing. And now, in that moment, I said, now I'm going to make a decision to become that top agent. Eventually, that agent came to work for me.
Yeah.
And I wish I wouldn't have waited so long to gain that confidence. So I would love for anyone who's listening, you're told, oh, if that farming area is dominated by someone, look at who's number 2 and number 3. Like maybe you start off with being number 3. Maybe you start off with being number 2. Give them a run for their money. Don't let someone else's success hold you back from your potential success simply because you've already decided that they are the ones who deserve it, when the reality is they should be inspiring you to show you what's possible.
Yeah. I mean, back in 09 or 08 or whenever you went and you went to that 5-star conference and you got those banks, those asset managers to start giving you some listings. There were probably plenty of agents at that time that were more qualified, had bigger businesses, and had been in real estate a lot longer.
Yeah.
And if you had accepted that you weren't going to win against them, you wouldn't have gotten the chance. So Veronica, this has been a lot of fun. If people are going to want to reach out to you, they're going to want to learn more about what you're doing, maybe join a future meetup or something like that. What's the best way they can reach out to you?
Absolutely. You can always find me on IG, Veronica Figueroa Inspires, or you can find thefigteam.com and always stay connected. Awesome. Well, Veronica, thanks so much for joining me on the show today. Thank you. I am honored. Thank you so much for having me. So glad that you got to make it. Real Estate Rockstars. If you guys want to chat with me some more too, the best way to talk is on Instagram at Aaron Amuchastegui. We still have some tickets left for our Rockstars Mastermind. It happens in March in Austin, the week leading up to South by Southwest. It usually sells out a few months in advance, so that's why we talk about it this early.
but it's the only event of its kind where we get 100 agents from around the US to come in and we just hang out for a few days and I teach you guys everything I know about some of those big events that I've been to. So you want to learn more about that, go to the realestaterockstarsmastermind.com. Come find me on Instagram. And if you loved this or if you hated this, please go give me a review. Real Estate Rockstars, thanks for listening.